Christian Book Club, a monthly gathering of believers and skeptics respectfully discussing important books from both perspectives. My name is James Walker. I'm co-founder of the Atheist Christian Book Club. I'm the Christian component to that. Also president of Watchman Fellowship, an evangelical Christian ministry focused on apologetics, primarily in the area of interfaith evangelism. With me is my partner here in crime, Bill Cluck. Bill Cluck is the other co-founder. He's a former Christian, now atheist. Say something, Bill.
Yeah, well, nice to be here.
Sorry for the delay for our Facebook audience. We did have some technical problems, but everything seems to be working now. For our Facebook audience, we are, Jim Hall of Atheist Edge is monitoring.
I'm trying. I'll be there in a minute, people.
Social media aspect of this. So down in the comments, if you have a question for us or something, we will be monitoring. We will try to bring your question up for the rest of the group. Now, what we're talking about today is something different, something very unusual. For over a year, we've been asked, or I've been asked by club members to do one of my books. Flattering, except I really haven't written a book that has to do with our topic matters here. But thinking through it, I thought, well, maybe for December, in the Christmas spirit, a change of pace a little bit, maybe we do a book that's indirectly related, but maybe something kind of a brand new thing as well. So I wrote a book over 10 years ago now, it's been a while, and it's called The Truth Behind the Secret. And so that's what we read, and some of you listened to the audio, some of you read the book, some of you read the original Secret. It's a response to a runaway bestseller book that stayed for over a year on the New York Times bestsellers list, called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. So I've written this response to that. So I think before we go to any questions or something, let me kind of give a little background for those that didn't get a chance to read the book, or the ones that have maybe are watching on Facebook and don't know exactly what I'm talking about. What is the truth behind the secret? Well, it all goes back to the author Rhonda Byrne and her daughter Haley. Rhonda Byrne, an Australian, obscure really, Australian television producer who was basically come to the end of her rope. She was in financial despair. Her father had just died. She was a lot of things, some physical problems. Basically, she had come to the end of her ropes, and in a really low point of her life, a desperation time, her daughter, who was feeling so much for her mom, gives her a gift. And it was this very obscure 100-year-old book. Now, she doesn't tell you initially what the book is, but later on as you read her book, you find out the name of it. But she said, Mom, she put a little post-it note, maybe this will help, and put some hearts on the post-it note. And so she picked it up, started reading it, and this is where it gets interesting. She said she couldn't believe what she'd started to read. And what started off as curiosity became a kind of a hope and even an excitement. And as she turned the pages, she said she remembered coming into the book with tears streaming down her face. She goes, how could I have lived to be 50 years old and never learned the information in this book? So she began to research. She Googled. She went to the library. And she believes she found out why she didn't know. And why most people never know what's in that old 100-year-old book. She said she found out it was a secret. She found out, she said, that many famous people, wealthy people, tycoons, giants of industry, artists, scientists, they knew, but they had decided, almost like some conspiracy, we want to keep this information to ourselves. Well, Rhonda Byrne says that's the end of that. Her new life mission. I'm going to release the secret to everybody. So she comes out with this book. She calls it The Secret. And first of all, before it's a book, it's a DVD. So she comes out with the DVD, The Secret, and it's almost a miracle. It's with virtually no marketing plans, no big producer, no distribution channels, just word of mouth. This thing starts selling tens of thousands, even over 100,000 copies. It was successful enough. It got the attention of Simon & Schuster. So they talked to her about doing a book version of the DVD. The book came out and it was even more phenomenal. What happened is almost immediately the first printing sells out of 1.7 million. The Simon & Schuster puts in the biggest reorder in the history of their corporation and orders 2 million more. She's on Oprah. She's on CNN with Larry King. She's on DeGeneres. She's on the talk show circuits. And the book just literally explodes. So it's first a DVD, then it becomes the book, it becomes a New York Times bestseller, and somewhere in the midst of all this, our publisher, my publisher, Harvest House, a Christian publisher, came to me and one of my staff members, at that time the vice president of our ministry, Bob Waldrop, and said, would you guys be willing to address this runaway bestseller and kind of give a Christian perspective of what's happening? And I had not even read the book or really heard much about it, but we decided to do that. So that's when we came up with our book. It was by Harvest House, which was The Truth Behind the Secret. And so what Rhonda Byrne discovered is, again, she found out it was a secret, but she found it was the key to everything. We're talking about health, perfect health. We're talking about wealth, financial problems, gone. Even world peace was finally attainable once you know the secret. Now, the first thing I want to know is, you may be asking, well, what's the secret? Obviously, I can't tell you. but actually, it's my job to tell you. So let me tell you. You could summarize the entire secret in 3 words. Thoughts become things. What Rhonda Byrne said she discovered in that 100-year-old book is she discovered that thoughts vibrate at different levels depending on what thoughts you were thinking, and that the thoughts in your brain go out like a giant broadcasting tower out into the universe, sending out the vibrations. And the universe picks up the signals of what you're thinking, picks up those vibrations, and begins to harmonize and send back whatever you're thinking of. Thoughts, literally, she said, become things. So the secret, the other name for it, is the law of attraction. Whatever things you're thinking will attract. And we're talking about money, we're talking about health, and things like mended relationships. I mean, anything you want. You want to get a parking spot at Parks Mall in the middle of December, this is the way to do it. Anything you want, but there's a dark side. There's a danger. The secret, which is so powerful, the law of attraction, thoughts become things, also has a dangerous side. Because the universe, which is so powerful and so helpful and can do all these things, all the wisdom of the universe, apparently struggles with the vocabulary of a toddler. So come to find out, the universe doesn't understand. Now, the universe does understand quantum mechanics. The universe understands but it doesn't understand words like don't, no, stop. And so if you start thinking about bills, you're worried about bills, the universe didn't pick up the part, no more bills, bad bills, stop bills. It just heard bills and said, your wish is my command. You go to your mailbox, it's full of bills. You wonder where those bills come from? Thinking the wrong thoughts. It's the law of attraction. So what happens is she says that the Arabian legends about the jinn or the genie, there's truth behind it. But over the years, it's become polluted. It's become damaged. So you can receive the wishes, but the part that's not true is that you're limited to 3. There's no limit to the wishes. It's unlimited. But you have to think the thoughts correctly. If you do that, those thoughts go out like a broadcast and it comes into your mind. Now, what I want to do is, some of you are kind of laughing, and this is one of the things that I think a lot of Christians are going to go, that's something that doesn't sound very logical to me. The atheists, I know you're thinking this doesn't sound logical to you.
No, it
but
makes
I-
perfect sense to me.
Bill,
It's to-
so what I want to do to kind of show you how powerful this is, I want to show you a 2-minute theatrical trailer. Now, I want you to suspend your disbelief for just a moment. Put yourself in Rhonda Byrne's place, or really put yourself where all of us have been at one time or another. Down on your luck, things are bad, you're looking for answers, life's crashing in, that relationship is damaged, whatever it is, you're searching for answers. What if you stumbled across this theatrical trailer? This is called Great Minds.
Throughout history, all the great minds, all the great leaders, all the great achievers, they had something in common. And now the great glimmering of truth can be revealed again.
You know, this secret gives you everything you want. Happiness, health, and wealth.
You can have, do, or be anything you want.
I've seen many miracles take place in people's lives. Financial miracles, miracles of physical healing, mental healing, healing in relationships.
All of this happened because of knowing how to apply the secret.
This is the great secret of life.
So that's basically the secret shared, and you can see, the promises that are being made. Even if you say, well, that sounds nonsensical, if there's any possibility that this is even partially true, it's something that you can see the appeal, the lure, the attraction, pardon the pun, of the law of attraction. So the idea is, again, kind of a little review there, the secret shared. First of all, we learned that thoughts become things, that there's a one-to-one correspondence between the thoughts that vibrate out of our heads and what is we attract to us from the universe. And that's called the law of attraction. So now, let me just say right now, when this came out originally, some of the late night comedians were having a little fun with this. And there was all kinds of jokes made and fake it till you make it and things like that. So just to give you an idea about how part of our culture was responding to this phenomena, I've got a little clip I'd like to show you where William Shatner learns the true power behind the secret. You ready to watch that?
Oh, yeah.
This is from Boston Legal.
Get it, Greg.
What are you doing?
Secret.
Certainly you can tell me. I'm your flamingo.
No. The secret. Haven't you heard? The law of attraction. Get with the program, man.
What are you talking about?
If you think positively, you become a magnet and pull in everything you want towards you.
Really?
I figure if I concentrate on world peace, maybe I can actually make it happen.
You're sitting here concentrating on world peace.
Oh, God, no. Got to start smaller. I'm thinking Raquel Welch. Get her first, then go for peace.
Yes.
Verdict? No, but someone's out here looking for Mr. Crane.
A celebrity?
Well, yeah, how did you know?
Icon? Sexual predator?
Actually, yeah.
Show her in, man. The secret.
I heard you were here. Remember me?
I can see the secret has a few kinks to iron out.
With this and William Shatner, etc. But again, this is a phenomenon. A New York Times bestseller. Oprah has never done this before. She had Rhonda Byrne and some of the other secret sharers on. There was such an outpour of response from Oprah that she brought in within 1 week. She brings them back for a second show on the Oprah Winfrey Show. So it was like unbelievable. Oprah said that all her success and everything she's ever been accomplished was based on the exact same principles, the law of attraction. She said, but I didn't even know it was a secret. So this is sweeping the culture. We're having all these responses. So one of the things, and there were some other both secular books. There were some really good. The New York Times, Washington Post, Time Magazine had a real good article about it. It was basically critiques of The Secret. And there were a number of other Christian books, but I think our book was the only one that uncovered what I like to call the secret source. In my book, those who got to read it know that I uncovered what I believe is to be almost certainly the sources that the secret came from. The 100-year-old book, okay, we now know it's Wallace Wattles, and the title of the book was The Science of Getting Rich. We talk about Haenel, Charles Haenel. How many of you got to the chapter of the 6 degrees of Charles Haenel? You got to that, okay? All the connection points. It really goes back to the mind science religions and New Thought, which would be the Unity School of Christianity. It was founded by Charles and Merle Fillmore. It would be Mary Baker Eddy and the founder of Christian Science. It would be Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science. This is 100 years ago. There was something very popular back then in our culture, the idea that sickness and disease were an illusion, and that any manifestations of lack of money or lack of health was actually just a matter of wrong thinking. So these are some of the sources. But what we uncovered, which I don't know that anybody before us had, is we think we found the actual source, and that goes beyond Haenel, beyond Wallace. And that would be a woman by the name of Esther Hicks. Now, what very few people knew, there were 2 versions of the original DVD, The Secret. There's this one, which is the one that sold millions of copies. This is called the extended edition. It's not the extended part of this edition that makes it controversial. It's what was cut out of this edition. What I'm holding in this is the much more rare original edition of The Secret. And when you watch the original, the main difference is the star of the original is a woman by the name of Esther Hicks. Esther Hicks, this is referred to as the Abraham Hicks edition. And it was so rare initially, they came out with more later, but it was so rare that when we were trying to get our copy, these were going on for $100 or more on eBay to get an original version of it. In the original version, you meet this woman by the name of Esther Hicks. Abraham's a little more difficult to explain. Abraham is allegedly a collection of disembodied spirits, or a collective consciousness that are, as a group, channeling through this woman, Esther Hicks, who's a channeler. Jerry Hicks is her husband. They basically, those who got to read that part of the book, interesting story about how she got exposed to channeling, became a channeler herself. But she's channeling these disembodied spirits. Now, some of you are still looking at me like, what do you mean channeling? It's not like with your remote flipping through the channels. Channeling is an occult practice where you can allegedly do a form of necromancy or communication with the dead. You're making contact with either dead people or aliens or spirit guides or avatars or deities, and rather than just making contact, you're letting them borrow your body, to come inside your body and use your vocal cords. Or how many of you remember the 1990 movie Ghost, where Whoopi Goldberg won an Academy Award for playing the part of the channeler when you had, was it Demi Moore and who was the guy? Patrick Swayze. Yeah, Patrick Swayze. And for some of us, like that caricature is kind of all we've got of what channeling is. She's supposedly the real thing. So they have a $1.5 million motorhome that they're crisscrossing the country, and they're going to the Holiday Inn ballroom, and they're doing these channeling things. Pay your $50 and come for an hour, and you hear the wisdom of this collection of disembodied spirits talking through the vocal cords of Esther Hicks. But come to find out, they also do, well, and that gets us to this one. My name is Abraham. So this is the group of spirits collectively call themselves Abraham. Well, not only do they do tours across the country where they go to hotel ballrooms and have, they also do cruises. You want to do the Caribbean cruise, or well, this is one of the Mexican cruises, the 2005 Mexico cruise. We were able to uncover this is where the contract was signed. So what happened was Rhonda Byrne paid her money to go on an Esther and Jerry Hicks cruise to Mexico, where you get to sit under the teachings of Abraham. Rhonda Byrne was so enamored by this, she decides, I need to do a video on this, so she makes a contract with the Hicks. 10% of the profits of this project is going to come about when you do this. So this is the cruise. This is, I don't know if you can see there on the screen there, but this is Jerry Hicks, this is Esther Hicks, and there's Rhonda Byrne on the cruise. Now what happened is, during the initial production of the original version, there was a pre-production release that the Hicks got to look at. Remember that they're bought into this 10% of the profit. And they were appalled because in the editing, Esther Hicks had been completely cut out of the project. You could hear her voice in places, but never see her. And they demanded that you put her back in like the original footage was. And she did go back and put in this edition and put her face in a few places. But it's still, she was played a very minor role in this edition. So what happened was, Rhonda Byrne's attorneys contacted the Hicks and said, you're out of the project completely. You're edited out, the royalty deal is over. She'd already gotten about $500,000, but no more. And I'm re-releasing The Secret extended edition, and you're not part of it, and you get no royalties. I don't know if she used the law of attraction to do this, but interestingly, when the Hicks were asked, why didn't you sue? They said, our attorneys wanted to, but we wanted to be in line with the law of attraction. So you can't say anything negative, even if your partner is ripping you off, apparently. So anyway, this is the popular one that came out. And but the real source is coming from channel entities. If you read the book, you know that also there is another video that came out about 2 years earlier called What the Bleep Do We Know? It was the same scientists that were interviewed, the same it's actually got, I think, better special effects and graphics. It's kind of a drama that they do, but again, it's very strange. The producers of this are students at something called the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. The Ramtha School of Enlightenment in Yelm, Washington teaches the wisdom of Ramtha, a warrior who lived 35,000 years ago on the lost continent of Atlantis, that's being channeled by J.Z. Knight. Both videos are based on channeled information from spirit guides. In this case, one that is able to still speak through J.Z. Knight. If you want to go Google it or YouTube and look, very interesting to see her go into a trance state. Her voice actually changes. You know, if it's acting, it's pretty good acting job. And so she's giving this enlightened information. And there were some other sources we dug up too, but here's some of the pushback in our initial research we were getting. I'm going to take some questions. Here's what we were hearing. We don't care where it came from. We don't care if it came from Ramtha. We don't care if it came from Abraham, a collection. We don't care if it was channeled, if it came from a seance. We don't care. We don't care if you read it in a Chinese fortune cookie. It works. And so why don't we go with it? Just suspend this idea of it coming from spirit guides. Let's just put this aside for right. Put it on the shelf. Because science has proven the secret. So what I want to talk about, I want to take some questions first, but when we get back off of that, I want to talk about the secret science. So what do you think?
Yeah, just a quick question. I got a little confused when Rhonda's daughter Haley gave her the book. then after that she went on this quest to find these channeling people, and you know what I mean? How did she get from point A to point B there?
Okay. There's another book that's published by Hay House out of Australia, which is where she lived, which may have been another connecting point, but we couldn't quite nail that down.
Okay.
But either through Google or what have you, once she got introduced to the principle of that, she started getting connected with other people, the mind science religions, other channelers and stuff that were teaching that, and then she apparently decided to go on the cruise.
Okay, thank you.
As a TV producer, she decided to do something about this.
So the science, she believes in quantum mechanics.
Yeah, we'll get to that next.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious, your opinion on this channeling business. You've got, you list 5 basic possibilities, right? Possible explanations for the phenomenon of channeling. Some was basically, okay, maybe it's real, maybe it's some kind of psychological phenomenon, or maybe it's fakery. I was curious if you had an opinion. In this case, is this demonic?
I've never met the Hicks. Now, I have met John Clemo, who is probably the world-renowned expert on channeling. We flew him in from San Francisco to interview him for the book. He's written the book Channeling. He's an academic. He teaches, I think, at Berkeley, I believe. I can't remember where now, but he is known as the academic expert on this, and he is himself. In fact, during the interview, he starts channeling an entity. So he's a believer, and he also, and I think this is in the book, isn't it? About how he said that just because a spirit's ancient doesn't mean it's good, and he warned about the possibility of very blankety blank spirits that would want to tear you apart or something. I can't remember his exact wording or something like that, but just because it's an old spirit doesn't mean it's a good spirit. And he also acknowledges that some of it he thinks is fraudulent. Now, and this would be interesting maybe to get, because this is the Atheist and Christian book club. As a Christian, now let me tell you this, of the ones I've seen, I've been to the psychic fairs, I've seen some of the top people in this area. I've never met J.Z. Knight, but I've been to the compound out there in Yelm, Washington. I've watched the video on it. The ones I've seen, I'm 95% of what I've seen, I'm absolutely convinced it's fakery. These people are good actors or actresses. Sometimes they do things out of character during the channeling. They don't know what a cell phone is, but they know what quantum mechanics is. There's some problems like that. There's some issues like that. But I do, as a Christian, believe that there's a possibility that in some cases it might be something real, but not a good spirit, but a demonic spirit. The Christians believe in angels and demons, and so we believe that in some cases that's possible. What are the explanations from an atheist perspective?
If the possibility is that low that they are legit, or that they are able to channel demonic influences, how dangerous is the secret then?
Well, I think it's dangerous if we can guarantee there's no bad spirits involved. It's extremely dangerous because it's deception, and I'm going to talk later about the medical implications of the secret. So it's dangerous on a lot of levels. Yes.
Isn't this just a rip-off from Myrtle Fillmore's writings in the 1900s?
Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. This is basically, it's nothing new. And but again, those who don't know the past are condemned to repeat it. And so this is what makes our book club way ahead of the rest of the world.
But she does believe in quantum mechanics, and in quantum mechanics you might have one particle that is turning this way, and when you measure it, the other particle turns the opposite way.
Entanglement.
That's what Einstein said. So it seems that they're somehow communicating, and this is quantum mechanics, which is, you got to think on another level, because there's something called non-locality, where you're sharing location.
There's a lot, and I got involved in this in the whole science section. I'll tell you kind of how we dealt with it. What made the secret attractive to me is not that I succumbed to it, but what the allure that I saw in it is that you don't have to believe in it for it to work, because she was saying that science has already proven this, that at least on a subatomic level, all the scientists agree, the physicists agree, that on a subatomic level, thoughts do affect matter. That when scientists think thoughts, and what they will say is, observer determines reality. So what I had to do is get to the bottom of that. Okay, Einstein did say spooky action at distance, but what did he mean by that?
Quantum entanglement.
And quantum entanglement, that's real. That is real, but does that mean
There's
that
still, it's very theoretical, and there's still a possibility that the particles, even though they're separated by as much distance as you want to put between them, that it was already predetermined before they were separated.
Right. Now, what I did, and when we get to the science section, I'll explain some more, but we put together a panel with the help of Hugh Ross, actually. I'll get to that story later, but I don't think we've finished talking about this other topic.
Do you have a question?
Oh, I was going to ask what scientists she quoted as far as, other than like Einstein or...
Well, I'm going to name them, and when we get to the science section, it's mostly Hagelin, and it's also Fred Alan Wolf.
I'm curious if, like, The Secret or The Law of Attraction, is that stuff still popular today? Like,
yes, I didn't. Yeah, I brought. Here's one of the sequels to the book. There's been a series of sequels that's come out. The website's still there. They're still selling. I think they're not $35 anymore, but they're still selling digital streaming copies of The Secret.
There's like 3 or 4 different, like The Power or The Hope or something.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 sequels out to it and stuff like that. So just think about the money. Those of us who've written some books, if you sell out of 1.7 million in the first printing, they print 2 million more. So maybe you only get $3 or $4 a book royalties. Do the math.
But you said the Unity Church still buys into this, right?
They invented this in the 1890s.
Right. So, but they still believe it to this day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kevin, could you take just for those of us who don't know you, Kevin? How would you know the Unity Church?
I've gone off and on for 30 years. The last 6 every Sunday.
Really?
Wow. And Wednesday.
The one here in
and
Arlington?
some Tuesdays. Yes.
Okay. Wow. And so you were hearing things like The Secret even today?
When I was given The Secret by a member of the church, I read about half of it, and all I saw was a ripoff from Unity.
Mm-hmm.
The motto, the biggest motto, if you don't take anything away other than this, is thoughts held in mind produce after their kind.
That's another way of saying thoughts become things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, okay, so I was going to say this.
Thing hasn't worked out.
I was going to say this for later, but this might be a good time to put it in. Let's all, believers and unbelievers, because we keep saying thoughts produce things, and science backs this up. First off, where is that science? I mean, let's see the peer-reviewed literature on it.
Yes, we're
Second, let's put together right now, let's come up with some conditions by which we could test this. Let's think of some. Is there any we could brainstorm? How could we test this?
Here's
you
what
want
I
to think me $1 million right now. Can we do that?
Don't you hear William Shatner? You have to start small.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to be able
Okay,
to
let's
turtle
think a dollar bill, right?
You might get
That's
you
small.
might get some euros or something.
Let me do this. Let's do this. Since Jim brought it up, let's talk about the science. I'm just saying, if you watch the video, and this is something, and I'll show you part of the video, it's much more convincing than I'm making it sound in my explanation. I'm trying to be fair on it, and I think if you read my book, you can see I've been over backwards. Let's not even worry about the spirit guides. Let's just try to see if there's something we can salvage out of this. But I don't think anything's salvageable. And if you got to read the last, what completely blows it out of the water is the sacred secret. And that's the very, very last chapter. But let's do this. Let's talk about the secret science for just a minute. Let me show you. This is a deleted scene from The Secret. This is at the end of the Secret video. They have some extra footage that they put in. This is called The Secret Science. And I want you to pay special attention to who's making the claims. And we want to go back and follow up on that in just a little bit. So this is The Secret Science.
This is the great secret of life.
Let's talk a little bit about the nature of desire from, now don't get freaked out, a quantum physics point of view. Oh my God, this is going to talk about physics. I don't want to listen. Relax. You're going to enjoy this.
When we look around us, even at our own bodies, what we see is the tip of the iceberg.
Think of this for a moment. Take your hand and look at it. Now your hand looks solid, but it's really not. If you put it under a proper microscope, you'd see a mass of energy vibrating.
Everything is made up of the exact same thing, whether it's your hand, whether it's the ocean, or whether it's a star.
And that's not a new idea. A fuzzy-haired guy in 1925 wrote on his chalkboard, E equals mc squared. What that says is on one side of the equation is mass and light and everything that we perceive, but it all equals energy. Everything in the universe is energy.
I don't care what city you're living in, you've got enough power in your body, potential power, to illuminate the whole city for nearly a week.
So what do we know about the properties of energy? Number one, all energy has a vibration. All energy has a vibration. It emits a frequency.
We are frequency generators. If you get close to someone's skin, you can feel infrared energy being given off. If you look at them, you're seeing light energy given off. We now have scans where you can put a machine around somebody's head instead of putting the electrodes on their head, and perceive and record the energy that their brain is giving off.
What most people don't understand is a thought has a frequency. Every thought has a frequency. We can measure a thought. And so if you're thinking that thought over and over and over again, or if you're imagining in your mind, okay, having that brand new car, having the money that you need, building that company, finding your soulmate, if you imagine what that looks like, you're emitting that frequency on a consistent basis. Our job as humans is to hold on to the thoughts of what we want, make it absolute clear in our minds what we want, and from that we start to invoke one of the greatest laws in the universe, and that's the law of attraction.
Very basically put, the law of attraction says that like attracts like, but we're really talking at a level of thought.
And that principle can be summed up in 3 simple words. Thoughts become things.
Okay, so the strongest cases, which was actually done, I think, even much better in What the Bleep Do We Know, is the allegation that on a subatomic level, quantum physics has already proven that thoughts become things, and that there are certain statements like observer determines reality and things that you'll find as part of the vocabulary that's used to describe quantum physics. And let me tell you right now, I try my best to understand it. I think without having a degree on the subject, all of us still should try our best to understand issues, even if we don't work in that field. And there's a ton of stuff that's very counterintuitive about quantum physics. Particle entanglement. You have wave-particle duality. There's this ton of complex stuff that it's not like Newtonian physics, which you kind of have it's a common sense to it. So what I think the mistake that was made there is to try to take some of those more mysterious aspects of quantum physics and try to say, well, that proves the law of attraction. Now, I think this is not something that just the New Agers do. I think this is something I see Christians do. Sometimes Christians want to say, well, what binds these particles together when the atom's spinning and you're not getting, this result? It must be God. Well, it could be God, but is there another possibility? And so, as Christians, we don't want to be, guilty of God of the gaps, so to speak. But I think this is a case of you have the maybe Abraham of the gaps or something. You have this idea. Now, did you notice who's giving us all this science information? Okay, you got Bob Proctor, but he's a philosopher. Well, actually, he's called a philosopher. He has no degree. He's never had even an undergraduate degree in philosophy. When he was challenged by the fact, where do you teach philosophy? Where did you earn your PhD? He said, well, I don't have a degree. He said, I thought philosophers were people who thought deep thoughts. And so one is a feng shui consultant. You've got one is a former Amway distributor. So yeah, a lot of them entrepreneur. So they're not scientists, okay? But let's put those aside. They do have some real scientists on here.
But there was a real gross error in that. They said every thought has a frequency, and then they show the brain waves, and they're not single frequencies. They're all over the map. So That might be why they deleted it, because that was just a glaring error.
And earlier, I think you mentioned about thoughts being able to penetrate, to extend for indefinitely, right? And I correct me if I'm wrong, the actual electrical emanations from the electrochemical reactions in our synapses can barely penetrate the skull.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about an inch past your head.
They have the machines
About an inch past your
what's
head.
it, hydrocephalus. I mean the electrocephalograph, I think they call it.
Right, but how far do they extend
well,
out?
here's what their argument is.
You can barely make it through the skull.
Yeah, but what they would argue is that the equipment that we have now and the technology we have now, we can barely pick it up here, but the universe is getting it clear across light years away.
But if it only makes it to
Well,
here,
the part we can measure only gets that far. Now, again, a lot of this, and let me say this, in the whole area of holistic medicine or New Age medicine, we get a lot of this idea that you are balancing or harmonizing energies, okay? Energy, yin and yang, okay? Can you show me that in an EKG? Can you show me this in a X-ray? Can you show me this in a sonogram? Can you show it to me? Quantify it. You said frequency. What's the frequency of yin compared with the frequency? Well, what you end up with is they finally say, well, it's not physical. Oh. If it's not physical energy, what kind of energy is it? Well, it's going to be psychic energy. It's going to be consciousness energy, or it's going to be, well, spiritual energy. Well, once you start treating somebody's spiritual problems, you're not practicing medicine anymore. You're practicing a religion at this point. And so a lot of I'm not saying, there's a lot of things good in alternative medicine. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't think so.
I think there are some good things. The problem,
I don't think there's
not
any
one
good
good
thing.
thing.
Not zero good things.
Okay, some of the medicine. Have you seen the muscle
Right.
testing? And they pull your arm and they tell you what vitamin or herb you need.
Oh my gosh! Don't tell me you believe that.
No,
James.
no.
Okay.
They're pulling your arm, but they're really pulling your leg. but
you put your foot in that stuff, and whatever the color comes out.
or iridology, I read the iris of your
Yeah,
eye.
yeah.
I see you have a real problem with procrastination. We'll deal with that later. So, but what I'm saying is, it doesn't mean that the herb they're selling me is bad for me. It may be good for me, but this is not how you find out.
There's a comedian, Tim Minchin. He said one of his stand-ups. He said, "What was it, Ken?"
He's a pianist.
Oh, yeah, he's a pianist too. He said, "You know what? Alternative. There's medicine that works. There's medicine that has not yet been proven effective, or has been proven to not be effective. Is called alternative medicine. You know what they call medicine that has been proven to be effective? Medicine."
I like that.
I have a point. When my son was a baby, they ended up having to do a CAT scan of his brain. And the people who did the CAT scan could not come to a conclusion as to what the results were based on what was in front of them. They weren't sure if there was a streak, whether it was an artifact of the machinery or whether it was something with the brain, because they hadn't had enough CAT scans of babies' brains done ever. And besides that, then the idea of it being the brain, and we don't know so much about the brain, it makes it so difficult to know what we're dealing with here in any discussion having to do with the brain, really. I found that very fascinating that you said that the energy goes out a little bit from the skull. I've never heard that. But that's just a limited piece of information that we know about the brain. I think of all body parts, I believe the brain is the one that we know the least about. Is that correct?
Our
I think
electromagnetic radiation, our body heat, goes farther than what's going
Yes.
on in the inside. So you know when you put on your infrareds at night, you can see the waves of somebody that's in the bushes over there.
Right.
Yeah, but is the brain generating in spectrums that we haven't even discovered yet? I mean, I'm just trying to give the benefit of the doubt on this.
But the trick here is
my brain isn't.
There's a lot of unknowns, but the trick is not to go, oh, it's the secret, or it's spiritual, or it's supernatural.
Once you say it's the secret, it means you do know, and you're telling us. So let me say this: the majority of them are speaking outside their field. Now, I'm not a PhD in quantum mechanics either, so I'm speaking outside of my field. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But you do need to know that there are some legitimate scientists that you saw a minute ago. And I do want to talk about them and why even when you're dealing with a legitimate scientist, that sometimes spiritual things may affect it. Let me just say, one of them that you met just a minute ago is Fred Alan Wolf. Now, he is a legitimate PhD in this area, quantum physicist. He has his doctorate from UCLA, former professor at San Diego University. But he's also the author of a book called The Yoga of Time Travel. While he does talk about that quantum physics has proven the secret in the law of attraction, he also believes that quantum physics proves that you can, using the principles of yoga, travel backwards and forwards in time. What I'm trying to say is this may not be mainstream science in this area.
Let me just tell you that I am a certified Iyengar yoga teacher,
Yes.
and we don't time travel.
Oh, come on. Once you learn how to, please come back once you have that course and tell me how to do it.
Just using transcendental
Unless you
meditation.
fly across the country.
I also am a transcendental meditation practitioner and have been since 1972.
And do
I
you
don't fly.
transit?
Well, we're going to talk about yogic flying in a moment.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Doesn't happen.
Okay.
So you're just an underachiever.
I'm an underachiever.
Just because somebody who is an expert in one field doesn't mean what they claim to be true necessarily means it's right. Just like Isaac Newton was a genius and invented calculus by the time he was 26, but he also believed in alchemy,
Yes.
which chemistry later replaced.
Right.
And there's plenty of claims that people make that just because they make it smart
a
in
bunch
one
of
area.
end-time prophecies that he made based on divine
Yeah.
scriptures.
Yeah, that issue that you could be brilliant in one field and be totally outside of rationality in other fields. That's a possibility. Also, I think sometimes people are being quoted as making claims that they never made. And I don't know if you read in the book about the guy on What the Bleep, the physicist, who was furious because he said, I specifically told them on camera that your consciousness does not affect reality. They cut that part out and made it seem like everything I was saying was in line with this. He was furious about it.
That's another thing I was going to say is when you look at what that person is actually claiming, the whole E equals MC squared, he's explaining it, then it moves on to another person saying something, and they thread them all together to make this narrative, and they're only claiming this one little section that they actually said.
Let me say the other scientist, the main scientist, which has, I think, even better credentials than Fred Alan Wolf, is John Hagelin. John Hagelin is professor of physics and director of the Institute of Science and Technology, Public Policy at the Maharishi University. Now, before that, he actually worked at CERN, as particle accelerator in Switzerland. He is definitely has his chops, has his degree, has taught in reputable schools. But John Hagelin did go through a conversion to with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and basically quit his job at a traditional university to become the head of science at the Maharishi University in Fairfield, Iowa. And he makes, to me, the more compelling case for quantum physics as proving the law of attraction. But again, it's tempered to me by the other things he teaches. So he does teach that quantum physics has proven the law of attraction, but he also teaches something called, through the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, he's a founder of Transcendental Meditation. He became a direct disciple of him at Fairfield, Iowa. For the older ones in the room, you may remember that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi became a guru to the Beatles back in the mid-1960s. Remember that? He introduced Transcendental Meditation. His first trip to the United States, he introduced Hinduism for Americans. It didn't get anywhere. He went back, regrouped, came back a second time, Transcendental Meditation, and one of his, I think, more popular statements is, you don't even have to believe in it for it to work. It's not a faith system. It's more of a scientific way of doing things. And there are, a number of I think benefits that can come from relaxation, from meditation. There are benefits of that. But we want to be careful then taking the fact that we're getting benefit and value from it and say, oh, that means all the philosophy that they're teaching or all the religious things they're teaching is equally true. So the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi introduced something called yogic flying. Yeah, before we show the video. Let me finish that part and then we'll take the break. We've got a late start anyway. He began something called yogic flying. This is flying without an airplane flying. There are 3 levels that they teach at Maharishi University. There's hopping, there's hovering, and then there's free flight, like flying around the room flying. What you're seeing is a demonstration of the hopping yogic flying. Now notice it's very, looks very convincing and amazing, really. But you need to know this is a high shutter speed picture. Okay. So what I'll do is I was able to dig up a kind of a rare video footage of what yogic flying looks like from the International Yogic Flying Contest that is sponsored by Maharishi University. We want to see that, what that looks like?
Yeah.
Okay. This is yogic flying. Now, before I show it to you, wait a second. Before I show it to you, you need to understand that the theory behind this, John Hagelin also ran for president of the United States under the Natural Law Party, which is founded by the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And part of his main platform was that we are going to create world peace if we can get enough yogic flyers. It takes the square root of the world's population. If you could get the square root of the world's population yogic flying simultaneously, all wars cease. Universal world peace. And they've already done scientific experiments where they brought small groups into war-stricken areas, and so this is part of what's being promoted here. So let's go ahead and watch from I think it's 2 years ago, the international contest on yogic flying.
And all of these predictions were fulfilled. But it's not just that. We could go on, and you could look in the book of Dr. Craig Pearson, the complete book of yogic flying. He has all the instances of the use of yogic flying by Maharishi to bring about an end to war. So all that is necessary is to use this technology, this yogic technology of yogic flying, and bring an end to all the suffering that comes from conflict, which includes not only death and injury, but poverty also comes from war. And the result will be a complete transformation in world consciousness, and there will be no more war in this world. And there will be unity in diversity in the family of nations, and the whole human race will live generation after generation, enjoying prosperity, enjoying fulfillment of life.
I'm not saying that this disproves Hagelin's scientific claims that are made about the law of attraction and quantum physics. I'm just saying that he's not in the mainstream of his colleagues in this area. He's been discredited by his colleagues, in fact. I contacted one of his, and I'll show you a picture of one of his colleagues who basically talks about how he's been discredited by his peers because of some of the theories that he's coming out with now. So it's, as one of the experts I talked to about, she said, it's not fringe so much as it's lunatic fringe. So we'll talk about that and what some of the other scientists are saying when we come back, but I really want to save some time to talk about the sacred secret. To me, that was the deal closer for me, the sacred secret. So we're going to take a break, about 10 minutes. There's going to be some more coffee in there, hopefully.
Oh, was it?
Restrooms are back there.
Can I just tell you that in addition to the Hindu temple, there's also a transcendental meditation office in Dallas on Preston.
I did not know that.
And they have, what do they do when you go? You can go and have a sit in one of their courses and ask questions.
And then you can pay them $700 and get a mantra.
Of course, I was 16. My dad had to take me to Dallas so that I could get my mantra, and it wasn't quite that much at that time. But
inflation,
yeah. But he was really pissed that that's how I used my budget.
So you can actually teach transcendental meditation?
No, I can't teach transcendental meditation.
People can. Maybe that should be another field trip. I would be fascinated.
That would be interesting because, like, when I look at that yoga, and like we've sat before, because I made him.
You've seen this before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I've sat with him before and made him.
Sat or hopped?
Well, we didn't hop.
Okay.
And you know, begged him practically to please take transcendental meditation because I think it would calm you down and with all the stuff that goes
And I
on
had
in
the
politics.
last word.
he
Yes,
needs to.
ma'am.
So he can quit thinking about Rush Limbaugh. So for 20 minutes, I don't care.
That might be
But-
worth it.
But I will say this: those guys are pretty athletic.
Yes.
But I've seen people do gymnastic things that I couldn't possibly do because they're very
That's a good
athletic.
point.
But they aren't flying at all.
It's pretty obvious. It
They
didn't
might be
seem like
tripping.
it to me.
Yes.
Seen a
And
lot
we've
of
sat where
gravity
they've said,
involved.
let's all meditate so we can have world peace, and we've gone, if we leave now, we can get to Whole Foods and still get home before the traffic.
Yeah, forget world peace. We start small, miss
Yeah.
the traffic.
Yeah.
We're gonna go get some world
So
peace.
I don't believe in that at all, but I do believe that positive thinking and things like meditation and gong meditation, which is a sound meditation, I think that helps you relax.
Before we go to break, I'll just
Okay.
comment on that if I can, okay? I want to do this early on, and I kind of forgot to. I want to say also, I believe in positive thinking. I consider myself a positive thinker. I'm not against in any way positive thinking. I don't mind using my mind to plan. All these things are helpful. I mean, how can you even plan without visualizing that? I don't even know how to do that. All these things are good. I just think that the secret goes way beyond that into a religious area that's neither compatible with atheism or Christianity. That's all I'm saying. So let's take 10 minutes and then we'll be right back. All right. Well, welcome back to part 2 of the Atheist and Christian Book Club, a monthly gathering of skeptics and believers respectfully discussing important books from both perspectives.
But we're both skeptics.
Oh, this
Yes.
topic, the secret, I guess we're both skeptics
Yes.
now, aren't we? So
we're in harmony.
Unity.
it's not a different kind of unity. This is something that I don't think we're going to have a complete kumbaya. But I thought this is something that, for the most part, all the atheists in our club and all of us Christians in the club are going to say, hey, you know, we don't agree with some of the propositions of Rhonda Byrne and the law of attraction and the secret. Now, one of the things that came up earlier, we just touched on that, I want to revisit real quickly, is the secret medicine. And so one of the things to me the most disturbing, forget the spirit guides, if you use this for medical advice, this is something that could be extremely dangerous. Now, not only is there the whole idea of medicine, you may have read the Kathy Goodman story. She has breast cancer. After learning the principles of the secret, she decides that she's not going to do chemo. She's not going to do the radiation. She's going to use the law of attraction, and she's allegedly able to heal herself. Now, I don't think this was, I didn't go back to see for sure, I don't think this was even in the first edition of the Secret Book, but going back to check in the current edition of the Secret Book, there's a disclaimer now. The information contained in this book is intended to be educational and not for diagnostic, prescription, or treatment of any disease, disorder whatsoever. And it goes on to say, the very last part of the disclaimer, the author and publisher are in no ways liable for any misuse of the material. This is for entertainment purposes only. Do not actually live your life this way. If you do, we are not responsible or liable.
That's almost word for word, but instead of a book, it's a machine. But that's what's obligatory on every e-meter in Scientology.
Yeah. Okay. I have a couple of e-meters out here at the office, but I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm not supposed to, but that's part of the lawsuit. So anyway, okay. So let me talk about too. How many of you got to read about the secret diet? Raise your hand if you got to read about the secret diet. One of my favorite parts. Not only does this cure cancer, apparently, but also we've had it all wrong. We've been doing it the wrong way, guys, on weight loss. Come to find out, according to The Secret, weight gain has nothing to do with physiology, diet, exercise, calories, carbohydrates. Go down the list. It's all about wrong thinking. Come to find out, you could have eaten the entire half-gallon of Bluebell had you merely thought the right thoughts while you were eating it.
Well.
So, again, one of the top, I think she said top 5. One of the top reasons that people gain weight the top reasons is looking at overweight people. So you want to try to avoid that if at all possible. Because when you look at somebody overweight, you might think overweight, and when you do, the universe says your wish is my command, and didn't get the part about you didn't want more pounds. It just heard pounds. But the number one, she said that's not the number one way that people gain too much weight. The number one cause of being overweight is weighing yourself. Come to find out, every time you weigh yourself on the scales, you think the question, how many pounds? Oh, you said it. And the universe says what? Your wish is my command, and sends more pounds.
Well, you tell the universe you're thinking of British pounds sterling.
I was going to make the same joke. Oh, okay. So, you never weigh yourself, but if you must weigh yourself, did anybody catch the secret way of doing it? You take a piece of paper, write down your ideal weight, tape it over the reading of the scales. Now you can weigh yourself all you want. Now, again, when we're having a little bit of fun with this, and I don't want to be a William Shatner or anything, but what we need to realize is there are people that this resonates with and seems absolutely logical to. So as I kind of feel like what atheists think about Christians sometimes.
Exactly.
You think, well, how can any sane person believe this? And I'm thinking, well, I just believe in Jesus, but look at this. Well, again, this all goes back to worldviews. And there was a section I did where a chapter that I talked about the one, the none, the many, or the all. And so much of what we consider to be logical, normal, is locked into what worldview we are. Think about a piece of puzzle. If I passed around a puzzle piece to everybody here, and let's say it was a blue piece with a little white speck, and I say, what are we looking at? So you're interpreting your method of your hermeneutic. The way you're interpreting that is you're looking at it and you're going, well, it's obviously the sky. See, that's a piece of cloud. That's a blue sky. That's half of us. It's the atheists. But the Christians are going, no, it's ocean. Look, see the color of the blue and the white, that's a wave and that's an ocean. No clouds, no ocean, back and forth. Well, the way you resolve that is you get the box top that the puzzle came. How many of you done one of those 5,000 piece,
500.
500? How about 6 giant pieces? Anybody that's 6 giant pieces? Same principle. When you see the box cover, and it's the New Mexico desert, this is not off. This is not all on the coast of Albuquerque or something. This has to be desert. It has to be sky. It's not ocean, right?
Yeah.
So the box top, Phoenix. Let's just say Phoenix. So that is like your worldview. Your worldview is determines how you interpret everything. Your worldview does that, and so this is why, and I was talking to Daniel about this. I said, we can have fun with this and pick out some of the low-hanging fruit and kind of, ridicule it like William Shatner did. But we need to be respectful of people that have this as an opinion, because if you accept the worldview of pantheism, this is all logical. It's internally consistent, actually, if you accept the idea of the all. And pantheism tells us that there is a God, and that God is everything and everything is God. And that actually we're all part of God, and God is in all things. So the table's God, I'm God, the chair you're sitting in is God. Any apparent subject-object duality, any apparent distinction between me and you, or between the United States and North Korea, or between a redwood tree and a human, it's all, on some levels, an illusion. Illusion might be too strong. It doesn't accurately reflect a deeper reality, because ultimately it's monism, which means all is one, and the one is identified as God.
Well, this book was written 10 years ago, but even today, they have this thing called the Rice experiment is proof the power of positivity alters our physical world. So you have one jar of rice where you say, I hate you, and another one you say, I love you, and the one Michelle gave this to me.
I found that, yeah.
Okay, so what is the one?
I didn't have a chance to read
Well,
it. I found it.
it grows really nicely, and
Yeah,
then
the other one
plants.
decays.
Yeah, and it decays.
It's black.
And if you have plants, you talk to the plants with loving care and so forth. They thrive. Where
The other one works.
yeah.
That's what I mean.
So,
several
and this
people
is
have done
happening
that.
right now. People are doing these
People are
rice
doing-
experiments.
Controlled laboratory conditions.
But yeah, no, right. But still, the difference between black rice and white rice on the same tabletop and this from the same jar and the water from the same tap. I mean, if there's a little difference between the rice, but if there's a huge difference
And they
between
have
the
them on
rice,
YouTube. People,
Yeah.
and this is right now, happening right now. So it still has an impact.
Yeah, it has an impact, and I think there are some unanswered questions, and maybe we need to explore that. I know that Ken, you had your hand up earlier.
Go ahead, Ken.
Was it something related? to
Yeah, you were mentioning about how we're having fun with this movement, this ideology, and you were candid when you said you wonder if atheists think the same thing that's about Christians. Well, not exactly. I think they're a little bit farther off the deep end. If you want to know my thoughts about it, but I think there are some points of similarity that I like to draw out. I created some notes in my on my phone, so it's a little bit long. But since we're kind of a combative group, we got to have some controversy.
Yes.
We can't just have kumbaya, right? You know,
So you mentioned that Matthew,
boring.
yeah.
where Jesus says, "Hey,
I like kumbaya.
Well, I'll pick that up. I wanted to say, first of all, I enjoyed the book. I'd never heard of The Secret before. I must have lived under a rock all my life. Well, I was in Africa probably when this came out. So, but it strikes me as, and you were articulating this as well, that if you, I've heard the phrase, the universe wanted me. You know, oftentimes people, I don't know if they're serious or they're joking, or the universe must not have wanted me to do this today or that today. And it always strikes me as, they talk about it as an impersonal thing, but yet it's doing things for me, like it has desires. And that just always, maybe it's because I grew up in a monotheistic, theistic, personal God type of environment where God is personal, it has desires and wants things for you or doesn't want things for you. But the whole idea that an impersonal universe could desire things for you just is a non sequitur to me, and I don't understand how that.
So what's your point,
so? So all I have to say, I appreciate the chance to learn. However, when you were talking about this cancer survivor, you were somewhat critical of the explanations offered by the movement for her survival, and those are the types of explanations that I tend to give when a Christian says, "Oh, well, we prayed for so and so, and the cancer just disappeared." The doctor opened her up, and she, where was the cancer? It must have been a miracle. Well, when I express those types of skepticism to a Christian, they're like, "Well, can't you? Why don't you just believe?" And yet, when you were, talking about this cancer survivor, you were talking in ways that resonate with me. It's like, well, maybe there was some sort of a natural, cure. The human body has the ability to.
So what I hear you saying is, if she said she prayed to Jesus and got healed, then I would be, see, it proves there's a God, and because she used the secret, I say, well, that's not even true.
Right. Yeah. So it depends on your starting point.
Exactly, and I think that's the point I was making about your worldview tends to gets into that cognitive bias and this idea of confirmation bias.
Right.
Well, and I don't see the difference though in Matthew where Jesus said, "If you believe, that mountain will be moved."
Yeah. So I was getting to next. So if you could indulge me, I have a few verses here that I'd kind of like your
just make it
your
quick.
thoughts
Yeah.
about. So, for example, James 5:14, is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Mark 11:22, have faith in God. Jesus answered, truly, I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, it will be done for them. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. So that sounds like a little bit like The Secret to me.
Yeah, and I will say,
there's a different mechanism, but it's similar.
So can he answer that?
Yeah.
Before
and you're right that there are some affinities and some parallels between a theistic worldview and a pantheistic worldview. Even though pantheism says that God's impersonal, they say there is a God. And so theists say there's a God that is personal, but we're going to have some overlap. So, and this is where I would say I would agree with Rhonda Byrne that I believe there's a possibility of having supernatural answers to some of life's most difficult problems. The difference becomes, and where I would differ from her, I don't think I have that ability or power. I know someone who does, and that was where prayer would come in. I would say in all the cases, at least in the context of all the Scripture, the idea is that it's prayer that's in accordance with God's will. I think some passages spell that out and others imply it without being explicit. But so the Christians in the room, I think, would say, oh, we do believe in the possibility of supernatural answers. I do believe that there's possibility of miracles, that's a possibility. I think I have seen some that may have been in my life. However, from the atheist perspective, it would all have to be, either a misdiagnosis or fraudulent or maybe an anomaly. We don't know. And this is one of the physicians I interviewed said, if you did 10,000 people, you are going to have one or two anomalies that we still don't know why they were healed, but that it's scientifically proven that they no longer have the illness. So it's the kind of the exception that proves the rule, so to speak.
I think what I'm hearing from you is a little bit watered down relative to what the Bible is actually claiming. It will be.
I try to never water the Bible down.
Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours.
Yeah. Again, I would.
That's
I
stronger
do.
than what you're saying.
Yeah, I do believe that, but I think the context of all Scripture is going to be in God's will. So if I truly, truly believe in my heart and pray that I'm going to be the new center for the Dallas Mavericks. And have enough faith in that, then that's going to be true. It's guaranteed. Now, I would say that implied in that, it's not explicit, you're right, it's not in that particular verse, but other verses that we have that talk about the power of prayer, it's implied that it has to be the will of God.
But there's a similar kind of unfalsifiability and self-reinforcing mechanism in both ideas, where in The Secret, if you don't get what you're thinking about, you're either thinking wrong, you're using the wrong words in your thoughts.
Exactly, yeah.
There are some parallels, and I'll acknowledge that. And I would say that part of my problem with The Secret was the non-falsifiable part of it. The difference, I think, would be that I can simply say God didn't answer that prayer, and the answer, or if He did answer, the answer must have been no, because I didn't get what I prayed for, even though I really thought it was God's will, and I prayed, and I do believe I had sufficient faith. I still didn't get the answer to that. Here's the difference with The Secret. The Secret is hardwired non-falsifiable. The very moment that you say the secret's not working, oh, you just said it. You made it not work. You can't even think the thought that it's not working.
Faith. Jesus couldn't perform certain miracles because people didn't have faith around Him. So there's always an escape hatch, and that's what I see happening right here.
But you also have Paul, though. Even when Paul prayed for God to take away his sickness, he even said that God did it. My strength is made perfect in weakness. So there are times where even the Bible, as you said, when you look at it as a whole, it's not as if you take one verse and this is going to apply every single instance. When in other verses, even in the Gospels, it's maybe detailed out a little bit more. So you don't find this overrunning theme all throughout the Bible, people trying to pray for a mountain to be thrown into the ocean, or everybody getting healed every time they pray, which means it was common knowledge that the answer is not always going to be yes.
Yeah, so I can agree with both Ken and I can agree with both of you, Chris and Ken, that I could see how an atheist could look at this and say, well, you've already built in an answer. No matter what happens, you still believe in God. So again, the idea is, I have never personally, I mean others have maybe, looked at answered prayer as proof that God exists. So because I've always thought, I'm pretty sure, I mean, God could have done this, but this could have been a coincidence. I'm going to tell you about one if I have time at the very end. Could have been a coincidence. It seemed like more than that to me, but I have to acknowledge, I don't really know. Enough things happen and coincidences happen. So I've never used it, that this particular prayer being answered, as proof that God exists. Had it not happened, since that prayer was not answered, then there is no God. So I've never used it as a kind of a test for truthfulness.
Jim Henson.
Yeah, two things real quick. one, as long as we're on scriptures, I had only one thing negative to say about your book, James, and it's Genesis 3:5. When you said, from this biblical account, it seems that Rhonda Byrne did get at least one thing right. The secret is ancient. In fact, it is so old that it was the first secret ever hissed into human ears, presumably by the serpent. The promise that we are God. So did I just give it away? Were you going to say that for the end?
Well, no. I mean, we can talk about it.
So
now.
the actual
We're
secret is that we are God. I guess that was already given.
You would agree with that, right?
I don't think it's been
That's
said
the
that
secret.
way. That's
Yeah,
the
that's-
secret
yeah,
secret.
that's
That
the
is
sacred
the
secret.
But
secret.
in the garden, we tried to become God. Our eyes were open. Right?
Yeah, but the actual verse is Satan or the serpent or however said you will become like gods because you will, if you eat from the tree of you'll know the difference between good and evil. He never said you will be God. So you said
be as God.
As God in the sense that you will know good from evil. You won't be God yourself.
Well,
so
to me, what it means is that you will be as God, knowing good and evil is how it's worded, which has the idea that as God, you get to determine now what is good and evil. So you in Genesis 3, you start off with a propositional revelational ethic. God said, "Thou shalt not."
Right.
So you know what's right and wrong because of what God said, and it shifts halfway through the chapter to Eve decides now what's right and wrong because she's functioning as God.
We can agree on that, but in your book you said the promise that we are God. That is something the secret God.
To become God.
Yeah, but it says right. You said in your book the promise that we are God.
Yeah, but it should have said become God.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So what was your other point?
Okay. This is huge popular. There's no way that there's not non-believers that follow this. I'm trying to think. How can an atheist still be a good atheist and follow that?
Well, I don't think there is such a thing as a good atheist.
Well, you know what so I can see if they try to find the scientific avenues and I can see an atheist falling for this. Now, how would a believer fall for this? And I started thinking. You tell me your take on it, but I think, well, here, okay, put on Christian hat. Yeah, I follow the secret, and I'm a Christian because I know that what I'm doing, the mechanism works, but not in the way they think it does. It's actually God doing it all.
I hate that. You hit a sore spot with me. Okay.
Yep.
There were probably about at least a half a dozen Christian books that came out on The Secret.
Oh.
One of them is called "There's More to the Secret." It's basically trying to latch on to the popularity of The Secret. Everything in The Secret you learned is true and good, except there's the next part of The Secret you have to add Jesus. And so
but it doesn't discount the original secret.
No.
What are you saying?
It was very disturbing to me, and I'm thinking. Now there were other good books on The Secret. Of course mine was the best, but there were other really very good books on The Secret from a Christian perspective. But how can you read that and not see this is not just not Christian? It's not in the same family of religions with Christianity. It's based on pantheism, and that's that sacred secret I was talking about. But nothing works till you get to the sacred secret. And let me get over there right now.
Jim, do you have that one example of the psychology article? That would speak to what I have a good answer for Jim.
Okay, let me get over here on that then. Daniel found an article that really talks current article in Psychology Today.
This is right up what you're asking. So a friend of mine on Twitter who's a Christian apologist tweeted this link and said this article has implications for how we engage with apologetics. Okay, and
as Christians,
and I DM'd him. I didn't make a big spat on it on Twitter, but it's interesting because he sent this morning as I'm reading through The Secret. And so this is a Christian apologist who I trust, who is as solid theologically as I know, sent this article in the preface, and of course Twitter, it's like, you get 240 characters to say how important this is for Christians to read. Okay. But it was like spot on, like front door porch of The Secret. And what it is basically brain science, neurology. And I've seen this more than once, and a friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago gave a presentation on here's good brain science and here's how Christians can use good brain science. Oh, and by the way, here's a Bible verse. Well, what dominates the presentation is the brain science and what the neurologists are saying, which I'm not shunning the science, but the attractive part for me is to see two solid Christian men that I know kind of going into that realm where it's like, if I can control my mind, if I can think positive thoughts, if I can, put all the negativity aside, then, hey, look at the brain science that affirms this. And basically what it boils down to is that Jesus is kind of a tool, and he didn't really die so that I could have happy thoughts, right? He died because of my sin, but the way that I see this sneaking into the Christian. Now, this isn't the secret. This isn't saying health, wealth, and prosperity. But if you go to the fourth slide on this,
that one or the next one.
Next one, the last one.
Okay.
This is the end of the Psychology Today science-backed article tweeted by a Christian friend of mine. You'll feel better, live longer, build deeper and more trusting relationships with others at home and at work. And so this is a prime example of how I think something like The Secret made such a wide appeal to Christians. You have an endorsement from a believer, whether it's through a book or through a trusted friend, dominated by brain science. Oh, and here's a Bible verse. And so what do you start to do? You start to think.
To borrow a line from you, okay, what's the double-blind study that it works equally effectively at work and at home? So I want to see the home study and the work study.
And how do I know my positive
study? I want to see the lab.
Exactly,
Yeah,
but they're making vague references to some studies that were done. And
Daniel's right. Look at the first sentence. That is the secret.
Yeah, and this is a
Speak slowly.
Yes.
Yeah, and look at the very last sentence, Jim. The power of yes.
Dude, that's dangerous for atheists and
this is not The Secret, but it's within walking distance of The Secret.
And this is exactly what you're talking to, and this is where I think it makes inroads into Christianity, because it's dominated by secular brain science. I got a stamp of approval from a Christian apologist who says this is really impactful, and then all of a sudden, I can think happy thoughts. Not exactly like I'm going to control my mind so I can buy a new car, but if I think happy thoughts, basically, this, like I said, a friend of mine gave a live presentation at a school a couple of weeks ago, where it was basically brain science, Romans 12:1 and 2.
Well, Transcendental Meditation does a whole lot of things on brain science.
No, I'm not saying
you can read Bob.
No, I'm not saying the positive thoughts are bad.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying you can read Bob Roth's books, and we never talk about Jesus.
Yeah, well, that's the point of exactly what I'm saying, right?
They stay strictly on brain science, brain science.
And all of them are making those statements that if you can change your neurons, you can think.
If you're interested in that aspect, What the Bleep does a much better job of trying to sell you on that. And have you seen What the Bleep?
It's a tough view.
It is.
You'll get exasperated, believer or non-believer. It's just a horrible movie.
Oh, what were you going to say?
Michelle?
I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I had heard that if you expose a child to a foreign language, that child will there will be neurons that grow in that brain that are created because of that foreign language that other people who have not been exposed to a foreign language will not have.
Now we're talking real science.
That's
legitimate science.
But that is actually correlates.
No, that's not speaking words into action.
That's not some spooky spiritual.
But what is it? But what is it that's creating those neurons?
I think it's creating neurons. I think it's just wiring.
Remapping.
No, it says it creates.
No, I think it creates the pathways. I don't know if it creates the pathways.
I thought I heard that it actually adds neurons
See how
to
easy
your
it is
brain.
Add this to our homework.
Yes, it could be a gossip thing, but like I said at the beginning, I don't know. But
it's a fine line here because you're talking real science, and then it's so easy to fool
just,
people into
yes.
off into pseudoscience.
And I only heard it, and so now I want to believe it. Yeah, see, there you go. You're right.
It's probably true. And then all you need is the stamp of approval of a couple of your trusted
Yes,
friends.
and I'm ready, and I want to tell everybody about this new thing that.
Well, let me do this just to wrap up this section, and because we're running out of time. Although we started late, so I'm going to go late. So, but the sacred secret, like a good author, Rhonda Byrne saves the real secret till the end. The very first chapter, she tells you what the law of attraction is. That's not the real secret. She tells you thoughts become things. That's within a few pages of the beginning. She holds off to the last section, the sacred secret. But none of it works unless this part's true. The sacred secret is, if you break it down in outline, first of all, you have to learn you're immortal. And here's how she says it. This is from page, I think, 150 of The Secret. How does all of this make you a spiritual being? For me, the answer to that question is one of the most magnificent parts of the teaching of The Secret. You are energy, and energy cannot be created or destroyed. Energy just changes form. Stop. Remember Bob Proctor says that there's enough energy in your body to power a city for an entire week? Some truth to that. One of the guys that I talked to, one of the scientists, actually a woman that I talked to, who's a particle scientist, says, well, yes, but there's a downside to extracting that energy. It's called nuclear fusion, and there's some negative. If you were to tap into that energy, there would be there's a downside to that. So, but here's how she applies it. Look at the application here. That means that you, the true essence of you, the pure energy of you, has always been and always will be. You can never not be. First, you have to understand you're immortal. Then she says the second part, you are enlightened. And this is the hymn that sounds like you're in a Christian church singing to Jesus, but it's a hymn to you, not to Jesus. Listen to what it says. The earth turns on its orbit for you. The oceans ebb and flow for you. The birds sing for you. Bill's liking this.
I love it.
The sun rises and it sets for you. The stars come out, you guessed it, for you. Take a look around. None of it can exist without you. No matter who you thought you were, now you know the truth of who you really are.
Wow.
You are the master of the universe. You are the heir to the kingdom. You are the perfection of life. And now you know. Not law of attraction. Not thoughts become. Now you know the secret. Now, see, and this is why it works. How can I think thoughts and make matter out of nothing? Because of who you are. If I'm God, of course I can do this. This is rooted in that pantheism. Everything's God and God is everything. So the fact is you're God, but you're God with amnesia. You forgot that you're God. And so you need to become enlightened. So the final part of it is you are immortal, you are enlightened, and you are God. And this is what she says on the last chapter. You are God in a physical body. You are spirit in the flesh. You are eternal life expressing itself as you. You are a cosmic being. You are all power. This is where you get the omni attributes. You are all power. You are all wisdom. You are all intelligent. You are perfection. You are magnificent. You are the creator.
Jeez.
Of course you can create matter out of nothing. That's child's play once you understand your true identity. In the worldview of pantheism, you start with the idea of all is one and all is God. But worldviews are like buttoning your buttons. You ever done it before? You get up in the morning, you're in a hurry, you button the first button wrong. How many of you have done that?
Yeah.
What happens to all your other buttons?
They're all wrong too.
If you're consistent, now some of you may be all over the map, but for most of us, however we button the first button is going to determine all of our buttons. So here's some of the buttons that come off of that. If you are God, then that means that that all is one. This idea of all is one. That means that God, if everything's God, God must be impersonal. God is not a he, but an it. This gets us into morality. Without a personal God, you have difficulty grounding right and wrong. It's like God is like the electricity in that wall. I can use the power, but I can't ask it to forgive me, or I can't have a relationship with electricity. You need to have a he or a person, not an it. So yeah, Jim?
I talk too much. Chris, do you have anything? Because I would give up my time to you.
I said my piece.
You really? Are you
Yeah.
sure? All right. Okay. I think one of the big dangers in this is because is and why it's so appealing to believers and non-believers. On both sides of the fence, there are some factual things in what she's saying there about the immortality of matter. Well, immortality has 13.8 billion years at least, right? But
that wouldn't be immortality,
right? But something older than our bodies,
right? Yeah,
okay,
all right.
So, and it's objective fact that any heavy element in our bodies is produced, could only be produced in one place, in a supernova.
Second generation star.
So yeah, we're all star stuff, just like Sasha's dad, who we just had on. You know,
agreed.
So yeah, there's some truths here to it. Then you start compounding all these additional, and the fact that those atoms, all the lead, iron, whatever in our bodies that did come from that supernova, it was not sentient, it was not conscious.
Yeah.
Bill did not gain his consciousness until his 23rd week or 23rd week of gestation. Anything prior to that, he was
your 43rd year of life. But anyway.
About the 23rd week of gestation, his light bulb came on.
Yes.
Anything before that, the matter that makes up Bill Cluck didn't know from anything. It had no concept because it couldn't have a concept.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway.
Now, let me talk about. There's one other thing, and we'll still have some more time left if you guys want. But we usually go at least to 9:15. But I want to talk a little bit about the Church of Oprah, and she's the one that I think really put it on the map. Okay. Oprah was Christian. You saw in the book, if you read that far, about how she still wants to say she's Christian, but she qualifies that. Her pastor was Reverend Jeremiah Wright, which is a whole nother issue that we really don't have time to get into on this. But I want to tell you one story, and then you guys can take it anywhere you want to from there. I was in L.A. right after my book came out, and I was doing a book tour promoting the book, and so I come back to DFW from LAX, and I fly enough that sometimes I get like a free upgrade, which is always a nice little thing, you know. So I get the upgrade, and I'm sitting down there. It's a late evening night flight, and so we kind of no sooner got off the ground, and the guy next to me, hey, how you doing? You know, I'm fine. How about you? You going home or leaving home? I said, I'm going home. What about you? I'm leaving home. You know, so well, what do you do for a living? I always dread that question. So, you want the red pill or the blue pill? You know, well, you know, so I said, well, I'm head of a nonprofit Christian organization, and we do research on other religions, and I also write. I'm an author. I wrote a book. I'm kind of doing a book thing here in California. He goes. He says, "Oh, really? What a coincidence! I'm an author too." I said, really? He said, yeah. He says, so I'm looking at him, and I'll say this to my own, you know, chagrin. I should have recognized him. I mean, it's my job to know these kinds of things. So he introduced himself. I'm sitting next to Bob Greene. Bob Greene is a personal trainer for Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, wow.
He's on his way to do the Oprah Winfrey show. That's where he's on the plane to go do the Oprah Winfrey show. And so he says, yeah, that's Bob right there. That's the show he did after he got off the plane with me. So he said, well, what's your book about? Oh my gosh. Well, actually, there's a whole chapter on Oprah. You're kidding. I'm sure she'd love to see it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not.
And I said, what's it about? And I said, have you ever heard of this thing called The Secret? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It sounds so fascinating. Have you read it? I haven't had a chance to read it yet. What's it about? And so I'm thinking, what can I'm looking for something. I want to be respectful. I really do. And I thought, what's his job? He's the health guy. And I said, well, it's about The Secret. I said, have you heard about The Secret diet? He said, oh no, there's a diet too. That's great. And he said, tell me about it. Well, come to find out, you can eat whatever you want as long as you think the right thoughts. He said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And we were friends right after that. And he said he actually met Rhonda Byrne already, but hadn't had time to read the book or anything. So we talked about it and a little bit and talked about some things. And so I kind of went back to reading, you know, and his thing. About 20 minutes later, he elbows me. He says, But James, don't you think there has to be more than just the things that we see? Isn't there more out there than just the physical world? I said, Bob, I think you're on the right track. And I just went back to reading. I tell Christians, I think, that was your chance, James. That was your chance. And I'm thinking, this is a 3.5-hour flight. He's not going anywhere. So I just went back. Sure enough, about 20 minutes later, he goes, "What? You didn't tell me what you believe. Don't there?" He says, "I think it has to be very powerful. It has to be the most wise and powerful force that there is." And so he said, "Well, you never told me what you thought." I said, "Well, of course I'm Christian, Bob." And I said. He said, "Yeah, but what do you believe? Doesn't there have to be a force that has to be beyond what we can imagine?" And I said, "I noticed you said it and force." He said, "Yeah, well, you don't believe in an entity like that?" And I said, "Well, you said it. Let me ask it this way, Bob. Which is more advanced or powerful, would you say, a rock or a dog?" "Well, a dog's alive, I'd say that would be not an inanimate object. He goes, I said, and between a dog and a human, which would you, now for some people that's a real hard decision. Would you say, well, it's probably a human? I said, well, I'm thinking, no name, I'm not going to point anybody out, but some humans and dogs, you make the case. But he said, well, I would say humans, and I said, to me, if there's something out there, it couldn't be an it. It would have to be at least personal, if not something supra-personal. In other words, goes way beyond person that we can imagine. So I would say it would have to be a personal being. He said, I never thought about that. And we had a great conversation. Now, did he ever give the book to Oprah? I'm going to guess not. I never heard from Oprah or her attorneys. I'm just going to guess not. But of all the airplanes and of all the seats, for me to be that night on a flight with Bob Greene on his way to do the Oprah Winfrey Show, could it be a coincidence? Absolutely. I'm not saying I know this for sure. But to me, I lean toward this could have been a divine opportunity. Could have been. And so does it prove there's a God? No. It doesn't disprove there's a God? No, it doesn't. But anyway, it was to me a remarkable encounter on the way back from LAX that night.
Cool. You were having physical thoughts about physical trainers, and they just
now, so the secret's going to say, yeah. See, I manifested Bob Greene to be next to me.
It's like the Ghostbusters and the Stay Puft and the Marshmallow.
Yeah.
Well, that's
You did give him a copy of your book. Right?
Yes.
That's just like the Celestine prophecy, which you mentioned in here.
Exactly.
There are no coincidences.
Right.
And I mean, I guess that's one way to live your life, believing that there are no coincidences and everything happens for a reason. And quick story, I have a younger sister, which y'all all know is extremely religious, extremely Christian. My mom was sick a few years before she passed, and she was in the grocery store, and she was worried about who she was going to get to help her with my mother, and Pearline showed up. And Pearline wanted to help, and she believes with all her heart that God put Pearline in the same grocery store as her.
Mm-hmm. So you can see how, depending on your worldview, something happens. And if you're a fan of Rhonda Byrne and The Secret, you think, well, my thoughts and vibrations cause this to happen. Mm-hmm. If you're a Christian, you want to say God caused this to happen. If you're an atheist, maybe you're thinking, enough experiences happen, you're going to have coincidences like this. But your worldview is going to shape how we interpret everything we see. And I don't know there's a way around that.
Yeah, I think in your book it illustrated the point when you were talking about Rhonda Burns. Was it Rhonda or the other lady that met with Oprah, and she claimed that it was because she was thinking thoughts of Oprah that allowed her to encounter Oprah. So
yeah, was Oprah in on it, or was she manipulated by the thoughts of the secret teller?
Right, but at the root of all of this is kind of a self-centeredness. I think that you saw it in that hymn that it's created. It's for you. Everything is for you. But I saw this also to a certain extent growing up in the Christian faith, where I remember listening in the 80s to young Earth creationists, Harold Slusher, and he was talking about, well, why are there mosquitoes? Well, why are these bad things? And he said, well, even mosquitoes, they they pollinate certain plants that humans eat, and so forth. So it all comes back to us. Or somebody asks, well, why did God give us fruit? From an evolutionary standpoint, fruit is something that a tree puts out so that animals can come and eat it, ingest the seeds, and disseminate it somewhere else. That's why there's fruit. It's not for us, right? That was a revelation to me when I left the faith, is I was always thinking in terms of us. God did this for us. But no, the tree is just putting this out so it can get its seeds disseminated elsewhere. So it just happens to be a happy byproduct for us. They're using us to get their seed disseminated. So I think it's a whole reorientation of worldview. A humanist worldview like mine is very much the antithesis of this self-centeredness of everything is for us.
Yeah. Good insight, Ken. Let me just say this, that we do have something for next month already lined up. You'll be excited to know that in the club we're going to have another the person actually live with us, and this is going to be the topic's going to be agnostic epistemology. How do we know what we don't know? Steve McRae. Steve McRae is, and this comes through Jim, who also brought us the enchiladas. I don't know which I'm more thankful for, bringing us Steve McRae or bringing us the enchiladas.
Yes.
But thank you, and also thanks to Daniel Ray for the beans and rice, and he was kind of our cook on the other part of tonight's.
That rice is good.
And then we had 2 different people do some unrequested donations to help with some of the expenses of the club, and I always appreciate that. I'm thankful for that. So, but this is going to be exciting, and I've asked Jim if you could take just a moment and let us know about the Non Sequitur show and a little bit more about Steve.
Aside from all, if you're familiar, he's a big YouTuber. Non Sequitur show was on fast track to become the next Atheist Experience. It was going to be that big, and it's going to be. But there were some setbacks. I'll let Steve explain it when he gets here. But his insights into philosophy are going to. A lot of us, we're armchair philosophers. We try to, unless you're Eric or Brady, you don't even know what maybe who knows what the ontological argument. Who could rattle it off right now? Okay,
I can rattle it off, but I don't think I can explain it.
Okay, right. That's what he's going to be here for. He's going to break down some of these philosophical terms, and he's going to let all the atheists in this room know that they're probably not even atheists. So, yes. So I'll leave it that as a little teaser.
Oh, that's a teaser.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a video for you to watch. There's not going to be a book this time, but we're going to put together, we have a video, either one of the ones he's already done, or he'll do something special for the club. But he's going to address issues of epistemology. Epistemology just deals with how do we know what we know? How do we arrive at those things? How trustworthy is it, and why? So, this is kind of a play on words. Epistemology is typically how do we know what we don't, but he's an agnostic. He's a self-professed agnostic. So in this case, it's somebody who doesn't know. So how do you know what you don't know? It's kind of a different spin on that. And he may also be dealing, certainly either in the video or while he's at the club, with the whole principle of burden of proof. And one of the things you have from majority of atheists and agnostics is the idea that because we're not making any positive statement, we have no burden of proof. A Christian who believes in God, now you have the burden of proof to prove it. I have no burden of proof because I'm not making a positive statement. And he's going to show you why, from his perspective, that is philosophically a bankrupt position to try to hold. So again, with that, it might be more of the Christian understanding. What's that?
Which one is bankrupt?
The idea that because you don't posit a deity, you have no burden of proof.
You know how we're fond of throwing up our hands and saying, "Hey, we have no burden of proof." Yeah, he's going to show us that we're not correct.
Anthony Flu's argument, burden of proof.
It's kind of different. It's I don't want to get too much weight, but
right. So and then we already have a book in mind. I won't go into depth now on about maybe a rebuttal kind of response to the whole epistemology thing as well. Maybe, but we're going to look at that later. But that's going to be the topic. You can go. He does have another YouTube channel right now, which is called
just Steve McRae.
Yeah, Steve McRae. You go look him up and follow him. He is somewhat iconoclastic from what I've watched of him so far. How would you? He can have a little profanity issues.
Colorful language.
You can say it that way. So I'm sure he'll be on his best behavior for the Atheist Christian Book Club, though. So
like everybody always has been, right?
Almost. So anyway, any other thoughts on the secret or the law of attraction?
Has anybody who defends the secret or believes in the secret or law of attraction, has anybody like written a response or like tried to defend themselves in light of this book, or would that be thinking too many negative thoughts?
Well, you do have even the Hicks couple when they were cut out of the agreement on the contract, said that they were not going to sue because it would be a violation of the law of attraction. And so you almost are stuck to whatever happens. The universe sent you for a reason, and it's your fault. You attracted it yourself. And so you make positive thoughts. In a courtroom and a lawsuit is not positive. So I have only had a few anecdotal responses, nothing written about the book, and it is mostly just, okay, well, what about this possibility or that possibility? Nothing. I've never gotten any fans of the secret saying that there was something factually wrong, like the connection to channeling or anything like that.
I have a. Oh, go ahead, Connor.
Is anyone here with an organization like Advocare or Arbonne?
I don't even know what that is.
Those are direct marketing companies where if you watch a few video clips of their meetings, they come very, very close to the secret in terms of believing what they can achieve.
I have an example that I think we were talking this afternoon about some of the similarities and between Christianity and the secret. That a personal experience of mine that just happened this week. I've been struggling with unemployment for the last year. Long story, but I knew I would be employed soon. Just didn't know how or why. But as many of you know, I'm now working at Watchman full time. Now it's a fully donor supported. I've got to raise my own support, but I've been coming to work as though I am getting paid. I mean, I am getting paid a little bit. I get a little bit of money from Twitter supporters, people on Twitter. Theoretically, theoretically, I'm getting paid. But I was at a church last Sunday, and I was with Brady, and I'm sitting in there, and I was representing the ministry for the first time officially, speaking to another body. And as the worship service was going on, it's like as a Christian, I can just tell you, I say feeling, but a conviction that God was soon going to, affirm this is what I was supposed to do financially. And what was it, Monday or Tuesday?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So for the secret part of it, it's like I'm going to think paycheck, and the paycheck's going to come, right? And I'm just going to think positive thoughts. I'm just going to go to work, and the paycheck's just going to be there. I'm going to thank the universe or whatever for it. But Tuesday, I'm sitting here at the table, and James' wife, comes in and shows us something they got in the mail, and somebody anonymously sent me $2,000, and I have not been formally trying to fundraise, and so this came in. So now the reason I say this is, the difference between like the secret and Jesus is, like as James said, he's like, for us as Christians, we can't manipulate the fabric of space-time to bring us money, but we know someone who does, and that's, I think, the difference for how I would attribute. But there are similarities. You could say, well, thank you, universe, and I'm thinking positive thoughts, and here comes the money. I can certainly see that that's the case, but I actually claim to know somebody who did create the universe and manipulate it and can throw money my way.
Well, that's fantastic.
I actually have a similar story.
What happened?
I prayed about getting a job and buying a house and having a pool in my house, and I really did get the same kind of conviction. But I knew that I had to act in total faith that I believe that I was indeed getting an answer that yes, this is going to happen. And I don't know if you've gotten this impression of me yet, but I do kind of take things in extreme sometimes. So I went out and I told as many people as I could that I've got a job. And they said, oh, great. And I told them with exuberance, I've got a job. And they said, wait, great, where? I said, I don't know. When do you start? I don't know. I said, and guess what else? I'm going to get a house within a year of having the job, and it's going to have a pool. Oh, wow, okay. Where's the house going to be? I don't know yet. So, and I would tell strangers, I would tell everybody this, and I did this for months. And I just rejoiced every day because I said, thank you, God, for this, for the house and the job that I'm about to get. And I got a job, and I was in debt, and I needed $25,000 to get that house. And I had no idea where the money was going to come from, but the money came. And I won't divulge the source of the money, but I had no idea that that money was going to come to me, and it all came within a year and a half. And furthermore, I told people, I said, oh, and this is all going to happen within a year, year and a half.
Now, did
you had a pool in the house, right? You had the pool.
And I had the pool.
Did you attribute it to God answering a prayer?
See,
or
I
the
didn't really say that,
thinking,
now
or-
did I? But I do, I believed in it was my faith in God that drew me to do that. And I felt like I wanted to demonstrate my faith to God. I didn't say, oh, I'm saying this because I have faith in God, because that'd be pompous. I just did like an out-picturing of my faith in God, so to speak.
But again, that goes back to that puzzle piece I was talking about. How as things happen, and I think that one of the things that's being part of the club for almost 3 years, April will be 3 years we've been doing it, is that, I mean, things happen and I think, okay, this is how I look at it, but I think, oh, how would my atheist friends look? I can hear Jim's voice in my head. and I don't think it's channeling. It's not channeling, I don't think.
I'm trying to be respectful, James.
All right. But it does, I think it helps me to see from other perspectives. Yeah. And so I can say, you know, from a Christian perspective, this is logical and a good explanation for me. If the Bible's true and if there's a God, then this would follow. But if you take the perspective, as Jim does, that there's no God and there's nothing supernatural happening, then yeah, you could say that it was coincidences, and there's all kinds of people who don't believe in God who get bigger and better blessings than that. I do feel like sometimes it kind of makes you, it tempers your enthusiasm when you pray for something and you think you got it from God, and it is. And I saw this really in The Secret, but I see it in Christianity too, not just and not just the word faith teachers. I see it in mainstream Christianity. You know, okay, I really prayed and really wanted this, and I was earnest, and yeah, God gave it to me, and so I really wanted that car, I really wanted that house, and I'm thinking, wow, so you're going to tap into the God of the universe, and you're going to get that energy not for healing people, not for bringing water to a village that has no water. I wanted that car, or I wanted that. You know,
Amen.
It's like it just shows you. And I put my Christian spin on it. Total depravity. Never underestimate the total part.
Well, I've got to say that I had a son at the time, and I did it after my divorce and wanting the best for my son. And I knew I needed to get anyway. I knew I needed to do that at that time.
Did you ever have a tinge of guilt, like you know, maybe I should be praying for people that are totally homeless, and I at least had a roof over my head?
I did that as well.
Okay.
I do that.
Good.
I do that all the time.
World peace.
But I knew my mission in life at the time, and it still is the same. It's to take care of my son. That's my number one mission.
Yeah. I don't know if you got the quote from Wallace, the original book that she read, The Science of Getting Rich. But he said, this book is not about philosophy, it's about getting money. Get the money, get the riches, then you can philosophize. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
And a lot of it, even the secular, Salon magazine especially, was very, very critical of very critical of this real materialistic bent that was presented with The Secret. I will say one other thing on the health thing. To his credit, Bob Proctor, who was one of the main secret tellers, when he was interviewed, I think it was on Nightline, and was asked about the Kathy Goodman story, that she immediately stopped her chemo and her radiation and only used the law of attraction. He was uncomfortable with it, but he did say, I wish that had not been in the secret book. If I had editorial control, it would not have been. And if I ever get cancer, I'm using every means available, and I'm not abandoning that. But when you're treating your children with the secret, and they have diseases, and you're telling them the disease is an illusion or it can be healed by just proper vibrations from your brain, that's a very dangerous thing. For all of us, I think, can agree on that, regardless of the spiritual aspects.
Good meeting. Yeah.
Very good.
Let's pray in these.
Do we close with a prayer?
Thanks for those
Can I say something for 10 seconds? Maybe.
Yeah. Please.
I see clearly The Secret is just a rip-off of Unity School of Christianity 100 years previous.
Right.
Myrtle Fillmore cured herself of tuberculosis through prayer and meditation.
And you are a current member, right, of the...
I gave my 2-week notice.
Could you tell us that in 2 minutes about why did you decide to go in a different direction?
Briefly, staying on this subject, I'd say that Unity worked for me starting my welding company, but now I look at it thinking, well, I had 13 years experience welding, and I understood welding very well. I knew exactly the amount of money I needed to buy the welding machine, the torch, and the truck. Hasn't worked so well for me the last 8 years. But of course, I could just say I have all these negative thoughts in my head that are countering my positive affirmation of my beautiful wife is on her way to me. That kind of thing.
The one of the things
I'm just full-blown atheist now. I've had enough of it.
One of the things with the problems with the word faith teachers, and interestingly, Rhonda Byrne tries to say, see, it's Christian because Creflo Dollar teaches this, and Benny Hinn teaches this.
Benny Hinn. He's a hoot.
Charles.
But one of the real problems with that is this does not work in Haiti. Go to Haiti and tell them they'll be driving a new Cadillac if they have enough faith, or they give their money to Creflo Dollar, and if it doesn't work in Haiti, it's just not true.
Remember, Jesus was the teacher and way shower. Fundamentalists call unity the devil's kindergarten because it's one step away, one step towards Satan. See? But that's the difference mostly that was really groundbreaking in 1890 is that Jesus was not the Messiah. He did not become King of the Jews. He did not die for our sins. We're sinless. We have no sin. But he is our perfect teacher and way shower that greater miracles than these, so too you can perform.
Christians, exactly, and Christian Science and Unity and all of them have this idea that Jesus was just a man, an ordinary man who had a Christ consciousness.
There it is.
He realized his own deity, but we also can have a similar conscious experience where we realize that we too are God, just like Jesus realized his divinity.
Mm-hmm.
You could be too, Chris. Come on.
You could be assistant God.
And you're on YouTube.
I was going to say, the whole, if it doesn't work in Haiti, it's not worth doing. Aren't people in Haiti praying all the time?
Absolutely.
Then
cutting chicken heads off.
See where he's going with it?
Yeah, so it's not working.
Well, but I think it's not just the voodoo and stuff. I think there are genuine Christians, from my perspective.
But he's talking about the efficacy of
right. But somebody make a comment about what they're doing, like voodoo and cutting off chicken heads and stuff like that. So yeah, that goes on there in Haiti as well. But I think there's genuine believers also that are praying. And again, it's this idea that being blessed of God is equated with wealth and success. That's just not biblical.
And
Jesus, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, okay, so, because the comment was basically, if I understand it correctly, well, if the health and wealth doesn't work in Haiti, they're praying, so it's not working, but the question is, what's not working? If they're praying for more people to be saved, more people are being saved, then it is working.
Well,
so they're not.
Well, James says praying for healing, too.
Well, no, sure, absolutely. And the Bible doesn't say it's like, well, we went over that earlier, but my point is, the Christian gospel is not pray and you'll be healed every single time. The Christian gospel is Christ died for your sins and you can be saved.
Yep.
That's what's working, is what I'm saying.
The Apostle Paul prayed for his infliction
Right, he
to
mentioned
not
that, but
3
that's a different
times.
author, that's a different person. James had a different perspective. James said, you know, the prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective. You will be healed. If you have faith, you will be healed. There's no condition to it.
Well, I don't think, but from our perspective, James isn't contradicting Paul. They met in Jerusalem. They said they were on the same page. So I think they are saying the same message. Not James is saying Paul's wrong and Paul's saying James is wrong.
Well, I mean, there's not a single person in the world that believes exactly what you believe or believes exactly what I believe. We all have our own. We all have our own.
That's why I'm the only one that's totally right.
James did meet Paul objectively.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
will-
Well, I think-
you can't smash them all together and
There's
say, well,
enough
James
evidence
really
to-
meant
Yeah,
this,
the
so
writer
that.
backs tried to get them on the same page. You know, they were really, you know, at odds with each other.
All mainstream,
But
even
what I-
secular historians agree
Yeah.
that Paul and James hung out.
What I want to acknowledge is there are what I would consider to be true Christians, not just voodoo practitioners, in Haiti that are praying and all their prayers are not being answered. So I affirm that, because some of their prayers are going to be, they're wanting, you know, a healing that they don't get answered. But you don't have to go to Haiti to find that. You find it here in Texas too.
And what about the what about the open-ended prayers? The prayer of a righteous man is going to be thought of in a certain way. The prayer of a righteous man is not going to say, I want a house and I want a job, unless there's a real need for it. And they're going to say, God, what is best for me right now? Will you please help me with whatever it is I do need? So it's not just the fact of what you're praying for, but how you're praying, I believe.
I mean, my last couple of years, I didn't want to make it sound like my testimony. I was all worried about money or anything, but
Yes, exactly.
the idea is that, so I finished my master's degree in 2016, and I was just going to go right back into teaching. Lord opened a teaching door. I was just going to go right back into the classroom. That didn't work. I ended up helping my neighbors with his elderly parents for 2 years, and we prayed. They both had cancer, and we prayed that they healed. They didn't. They both died. I was praying for steady employment. I was driving for Lyft, and it was up and down, and I was praying to God for a new car, and I lost 2 cars. And then I was unemployed by powers beyond my own ability.
Don't pray for me.
No. And I prayed. So in January, I lost 2 of my primary vehicles. I was out of a job, and I live in the country, so I was really stuck. And I was praying that God was going to do something. I believed He was going to do something. I tried to apply for jobs, but you can't without a car. And so a lot of these prayers didn't seem like they were going to be answered. This was in 2016 where all of this started to unfold. And I even applied for another apologetics job. I applied for teaching jobs. I was just praying that God was going to do something, and He just never answered the prayers that I was wanting. And I think it boils down to the perspective of God's perspective. I prayed for what I wanted. He gave me what I needed. And it led me to Watchmen. And so I'm just saying that the prayers were answered. Just my exegetics of what I was expecting were not met, but that doesn't mean my prayers were unanswered. They were answered in a way that I couldn't conceive. Never in a million years could I conceive of the path that they led me down. But I believe now, where I'm at now, that yes, they were answered, but just not in a way that I ever saw.
No, but you could see. I'm sorry.
I'd say our biblical understanding of prayer is not that we're getting access to the checkbook of God, and He's given us a blank check to get whatever we want.
Mm-hmm.
And you would also acknowledge that if you had, from an atheist perspective, you could look at all that same data and see
God's not around.
There's no God to answer the prayer. Prayer doesn't work, or there is no God.
Oh,
that could be a logical
Or that
explanation.
maybe
for all
I'm
that.
not doing the right things to put me in the right. Maybe
Yeah.
I.
Yeah,
not
or
doing
yeah,
the
you got
right
that.
things
What did I
to
do
put
wrong?
me
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the place
So
that
that's
I
kind
need
of
to
a
be.
major point I want to focus in on, is that if you have a claim, let's call it claim C, right? Whether it's a claim that the law of attraction works, or that prayer is efficacious, or whatever the claim might be, or that God exists, or whatever it is. If empiricism, if empirical investigation doesn't bear it out, then you have to have an escape hatch. You always have to have an escape hatch. with a law of attraction, you're just, and this is what Chris was saying, you're just not thinking the right thoughts. Or with prayer, you're not having enough faith, or you're not asking in God's will, or you're thinking of God as a cosmic vending machine. Even though James said, pray and he will be healed, pray with faith. You're not having enough faith. There's always an escape hatch when you're dealing with things, with claims that are not correspondent to reality.
If you're going to claim it.
Do atheists
all that I hear is just, it's in
Do atheists have an escape hatch on anything?
Like, for example, the fine-tuning of the universe, or what, like, I mean, what give an example?
I'm just asking.
I don't know what claims we're making that
I
you
can
think
be
we should
educated.
get escape hatch.
I can give you a dozen things right now that would falsify my position. I don't know if a Christian can.
So let me put this out there. Not every single claim of Christianity needs to be falsifiable or empirically verifiable in order to be reasonably held by a Christian. If the Christian worldview in general can be shown to be supported by evidence, then these non-falsifiable things like prayer and the fact that there's an escape hatch or whatever, however you want to put it, that's okay if it hinges on something that is actually supported by evidence.
But what my claim is that there are verses that are falsifiable, like the ones I read, and they are falsified because the biggest empirical investigation of intercessory prayer was called the STEP. It's something, I forget the acronym, but it was over a 10-year period where they investigated the outcomes of people who went through heart surgery, and some were prayed for. There was a group A that was prayed for and group B that was not prayed for, and the outcome was actually slightly better for those who weren't prayed for. It was statistically insignificant, but there was really no difference between the two groups. 10 years, they spent $2.5 million at Templeton Foundation. This is a pro-faith group putting on this study. So there is no empirical basis for the efficacy of prayer, even though there are empirical claims made in James and in the Gospels about praying, and these things will happen if you have faith.
Eric has a counter.
Righteous man too.
Yeah, so I'd say that there's a lot of studies, and they're contradicting studies, but also Richard Swinburne, who's a philosopher, makes an interesting point that if you're doing a study on prayer specifically to try to find something out, then, now admittedly you can say there's an escape hatch, then God could say, well, why should I be obliged to answer your prayer when you're doing it for a study? And
right.
There's actually a verse, isn't there, about testing the Lord? And it's all just like the law of attraction. Like if you think the wrong thoughts, and it's going to backfire on you on purpose.
So, that's what I said. You call it escape hatch, but the main point I was wanting to get at was, I don't know any Christian in this room, and I don't know who all is a Christian here, that says, I believe in God because he answered a prayer. So it's not as if Christians use this as a measuring tool that cannot be falsified to believe in God. If anything, I think prayer is something that we would come to after the fact. Then you have other denominations and doctrines that would probably teach that prayer is not a way to get things, and some people, I think C.S. Lewis said, prayer changes you, not God. So prayer is not even a way to get things answered.
And I've heard all of these things before, but I keep coming back to James, the passage that I read. It's a very specific and very concrete.
But so I don't think you heard what I said last. So some Christians don't believe healing's not even for today. So they might say, well, it's ceased. But then I would even argue, I do believe in healing still happens, but you argue throughout the scripture that in the context, not everybody's always healed. But the main point I'd say was, I don't think anyone says I believe in God because he gave me a parking spot at Walmart in the front parking lot, and if you could disprove that, I'll give up Christianity. Like that's not our measure.
That's a straw man.
Well, no, that's what I'm accusing you guys of doing. It's a straw man to say we can't prove prayer works, therefore Christianity's not true.
I'm responding to a specific claim that James made.
Which one was that again? Say it again.
James write to? Who did James write the book of James to?
It was to the Dispersia, the Christian Jews that were had to flee Jerusalem.
Honestly, I'm hearing a lot that's equating to black and white versus gray. That's what I'm hearing an equation out of. The escape hatch.
Do you like?
Escape hatch is the gray. I believe in gray because there's just very few things that we know. This is that epistemology thing again. Very few things that we know. And to take words from the beginning of a sentence to the end of a sentence period Okay, fine, we can try to do that, but then you have to define righteous if that's in that, if we're talking about. So, and there's variables about the people they're praying. Who were those people that were praying?
Like Eric pointed out, there
Why
are.
make the claim to begin with? It's meaningless.
I'm just saying there's a lot of variables in
I know,
a
but
prayer
it's-
study.
but you could, then it's meaningless.
Millions,
And I'm curious,
millions
if we
of
conceded
crap.
all here that prayer doesn't work, what would that conclude?
Well, it would.
You don't want to conclude. That's the point. Concluding
I'm
is
just-
folly.
No, I'm asking. Let's, like, for the sake of argument, let's say we could prove prayer doesn't work. Therefore,
Well, it would falsify. Every believer in here, as far as I know, believes the Bible is an inerrant word of God, and if the Bible says that this will happen when you pray, and if you're righteous, you know all these conditions. It
does not.
I would say the majority of Christians
Ken,
are not inerrantists.
The NASB, which is probably the most, is probably one of the most literal.
Right.
I have a textual interpretation and a footnote, and the verse 15 says, "Restore the one who is sick," with a footnote that says, "Save the one who is sick."
Mm-hmm.
The two words that are used there don't really mention health.
Will raise them up, and it's talking about a sick person.
there's another translation that says
No,
save.
it say we'll save the sick person. It might restore the sick person, but there's not a
Gotta
sense
go
in this
back to the
text
Greek now.
that you go back to your perfect health.
Full of the Greek.
But if I understand your point correctly,
Oh, real quickly, we got the flyers. I forgot to pass those around. Do that.
so you're saying that if we
Put that on your
prayer doesn't
fridge.
work,
Hope you can be here. Great comments that you made, adding to the conversation. Thank you.
Clear that long.
Just keep coming. It will be
I
very
love
clear.
it. No, y'all are wonderful.
That was great.
I learned something new.
I learn something new every
Be
club.
thrown in trash.
I learned how much I don't know.